Back now to our story from the top of the hour on the Obama administration facing some new questions about the warnings we heard just a couple of months ago about what would allegedly happen when those automatic spending changes known as the sequester took effect last month, and how much of the fallout has yet to materialize. Here's some more of our own Ed Henry questioning White House Press Secretary Jay Carney about the warnings we heard from the DHS Secretary Janet Napolitano on the furloughs of Border Patrol agents. It happened about 24 hours ago, the exchange. Watch this.
Feel free to convey to your readers and viewers that the sequester doesn't occur. Okay. And then explain. Nobody said it wasn't dire.
The secretary came in here and said that we were going to be less safe, that people were going to be crossing the border because there were less Border Patrol agents. And then they announced yesterday, actually, we're not doing that. So I'm not saying it's not important. I'm saying, did she mislead the public?
Absolutely not. And I'm saying that this is, I mean, you're editorializing enormously in that. But
how so? I'll give you February 25th. She said, if you have 5,000 fewer Border Patrol hours or agents, you have 5,000 fewer Border Patrol agents. That has a real impact. Those are her words. That's not politicizing.
And how is that not the case?
They announced yesterday they're not doing that.
Well, but there are reductions, and whether it's those Border Patrol... Go ahead and report that, Ed. We've made clear...
Okay,
look,
you said 5,000. They said yesterday we're not doing that.
Talk to those who have been laid off at defense industries. Talk to those who have been furloughed in the... Look, you can obviously go to DHS and...
She said we're going to be less safe.
Right. And the impacts of the sequester will not all be immediate. They will. If you can predict to me when the sequester will end, if it will end, when Republicans will make the fateful decision to fund Border Patrol agents or fund our national security interests or fund Head Start at appropriate levels, and rather than continue to extend tax breaks to the wealthy and well-connected, tell me when that happens, and then we can assess what damage was done after the fact.
Joining me now to discuss it, Simon Rosenberg. He's the president and founder of the New Democrat Network and a former Bill Clinton campaign advisor. And Tony Sayegh, who was a Fox News contributor. Wow. Let me just start. This is the second time we've seen Jay Carney, second time in 3 weeks, seen him snap at one of our reporters over what this reporter deems a legitimate question, which is, Janet told us was going to happen. Arnie Duncan said there wasn't much flexibility, if any, when it comes to these cuts. So where are they, and were they being truthful? Because the cuts are now no longer happening. I want to ask you about the defensiveness first, Tony, before we get to the substance. Why? Am I wrong? Do I perceive a defensive press secretary?
You're absolutely right, Megyn. This is, in the eyes of most of us, a not-so-perfect storm for Democrats. The Obama White House is generally very good at politics, and they made a huge misstep by trying to over-exaggerate the negative impact of sequester. And what you've seen in the last month is a drop in public opinion. The Gallup shows that he went from 53% to 46%. Most polls show him at 16-month lows. But worse for the president, and why Carney is so unhinged, is he's lost the media support on this. They've totally abandoned his flank. He got in a shouting match very similar with Jonathan Karl of ABC News weeks ago because of the whole White House Secret Service not wanting to give the tours. And Karl brought up the very good point. Well, how much did your trip to Florida to play golf with Tiger Woods cost? And, of course, that set off a whole fury. The media understands that the Obama administration overreached with sequester. The New York Times has called him the president that cried wolf. Bob Woodward, the gold standard of the mainstream media, is the one who blew the whistle on the Obama administration, pointing out that sequester was an idea. So more worrisome to them than the loss of public opinion is the loss of the White House press corps that usually protects them.
Can you respond to that point specifically, Simon?
About the defensiveness? Is that what?
And Tony's theory that it's, they're feeling that because they're losing the press. They're not just losing, some support in the public opinion polls, but they're losing a press that had been, pretty enamored to some extent with the president.
I'm not sure that the White House staff would feel that the press was in love with them over the last 4 years. But well,
you remember President Obama even joked at the White House Correspondents' Center. All of you covered me. Most of you voted for me.
So, look, I think that this is, I don't know that they're being defensive in general. I think yesterday there was a heated exchange. between your guy Ed Henry, very good reporter, by the way, and Jay Carney, and I think that they are making their case. I think part of what the frustration you saw yesterday was this sense that there are stories. I saw 3 stories today about things that are getting cut out in local communities because of the sequester, and it could be that there isn't this sense that things have really changed, and there's frustration, right? But the idea that there isn't going to be pain when we cut $85 billion out of the budget and that things won't really be felt is itself kind of a silly argument. Of course it will. That's the whole point, right? The whole point is this was supposed to have pain.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there have been some cuts, and some people have been furloughed, and so on. I mean, that's just a fact. But and it seemed to be the place to which Jay Carney was trying to go, Tony. You know, like, you tell me, because it seemed like Ed had him on the border security issue, and so he's trying to get over to this other place where he felt more comfortable, where there had actually been furloughs and so on. But that doesn't make the question about the Border Patrol illegitimate, and that is something that a lot of people care about, what's happening at the border, and whether Ms. Napolitano was correct when she said we're going to have 5,000 furloughs there, and that was going to make us less safe.
And how timely is this conversation, Megyn? What are we discussing in Washington this week? Immigration reform. What's the biggest stumbling block for Republicans? Border security. So it's obviously no question that this is something very topical and that any reporter, especially a great one like Ed Henry, would want to ask the White House press secretary on. What amazed me is there are kind of many legitimate responses. Simon just kind of gave one. Of course, sequestration is going to hurt. No one's argued against that. It's just don't exaggerate to the extent. But to me, Jay Carney attacking almost Ed Henry and Fox News and the fact that he's, quote-unquote, editorializing just shows how shallow their response is. He said, yeah, go ahead and viewers and readers, yeah, sequestration doesn't matter. I mean, that would be kind of a back and forth I might have with Simon in the green room. That's not a back and forth you would expect the White House press secretary to have with the correspondent of the highest rated cable station in America.
Well, I think it reminded me of a technique that they used to teach us when I practiced law, and they called it bridging. And they used to say that they bring the young associates in, and they teach you that when you're in front of a judge and he asks you a really hard question that you may know the answer to it, but you can't give the answer up because it's not going to help your client, you bridge away. You know, you bridge away like, Ms. Kelly, how much do you weigh? You know, it's funny you should ask that, Your Honor, because we were just having a discussion the other day about weights and measures and how they've changed so much in the past 20 years and how the Canadians have such a different system than we have. And why is that? And what about Canada? What's happening with... And now, speaking of Canada, Simon, and that is what you call
Megyn,
bridging away from the uncomfortable subject.
Before you go, let's be clear that what we found out this morning was that the reason why there weren't the cuts of the 5,000, we didn't have the Border Patrol cuts, is because Congress in their budget a few weeks ago restored the money. Because the pain of losing the 5,000 border agents, it was 25% of the time, the collective time of all the border guards along the border, Congress thought that was a bad idea. And in some ways that reinforces the narrative that Obama's been pushing, which is that we made some dumb decisions in the sequester. Congress has had to put some stuff back. This was one of them. The reason why Jay Carney should have known better, but Jay didn't know, but Ed didn't know either. But Ed didn't know either. Ed made a mistake on the air yesterday.
Why didn't just say, you know what, Ed, that is a good question, and I will get back to you on that.
Because
Ed's job is to answer the question.
Let Simon answer that, and then I'll give it to you, Tony.
No. I mean, look, Jake, both of them made a mistake yesterday, right? Jay should have known about what had happened. But the point is that in the budget, and this gets to the point that Janet Napolitano has done a good job on the border, is much safer today. She has a lot of credibility on this. No. And so the point of this, bridging. I took your advice, Megyn. So the point is that they have a lot of credibility. They have a lot of credibility on this. They were able to restore because of the additional funding that they got from Congress. And by the way, thank God, it was a good decision that Congress made to make sure that we keep the gains that we've made along the border, that we didn't lose those gains because of the sequester.
I'll give you a quick final word, Tony.
Look, Congress wanted to give the president the authority to specifically reallocate the cuts and sequester before it even went into action so we could avoid draconian cuts. The president summarily rejected that. It's also Ed Henry's job to ask the question, not answer the question. The fact that the White House press secretary couldn't give the answer Simon just did is pretty sad, and why they get so defensive on sequester.
Well, I don't fault him for not being able to give the answer on the spot, but I do fault if you don't know. Sometimes you got to say that's a good question.
Well, don't attack
I'll look
the reporter.
into it, and then you maintain your integrity with the viewer, the reporter, the public. In any event.